Even though the Trump family is gone, the nepotism in the executive branch is somehow not. That's because the Biden administration is continuing a lot of that nepotism, not within the Biden family itself, but in the families very, very close to it. So this is from the Washington Post. In the first few months of Biden's presidency, at least 5 children of his top aides have secured coveted jobs in the new administration. They include 2 sons and a daughter of the White House counselor, the daughter of a deputy White House chief of staff, and the daughter of a director of presidential personnel. The pattern, which continued this week with the Treasury Department's announcement that it was hiring JJ Ricketty, son of Biden counselor Steve Ricketty. By the way, JJ is the 3rd Ricketty child to be part of the administration. He is a 2020 college graduate. That was last year, whose father is one of Biden's most trusted West Wing aides. Ricketty is assuming a junior level position as a special assistant in the Office of Legislative Affairs. Let's go about the other children. Steve Ricketty's daughter, Shannon Ricketty, graduated college in 2016 as a deputy associate director of the Office of White House Social Secretary, a job she secured after working at the Aspen Institute on the Biden transition team. Then you've got, I forgot where the other Ricketty is. He's coming back somewhere. But Bruce Reed, a deputy White House chief of staff and longtime Biden confidant, has a daughter, Julia Reed, who graduated college in 2015 and works as Biden's day scheduler. Guys, just your initial reactions on this. Is this surprising?
Surprising. Here's my initial reaction to it. Of course. So, look, it was Hunter Biden an expert on Ukrainian gas? No, he was not. Okay, so by the way, was Jared Kushner an expert on Middle East peace? No, he was.
I was gonna say yes. No.
Oh, you were gonna guess yes? Yeah, it's
still 50, holding out hope.
So, this is the oldest game in Washington. Orrin Hatch's son was a giant lobbyist. Orrin Hatch would always vote with his son's firm, but he said, "Oh no, we never met about that. No, over Thanksgiving, we never talk about it. It's just a pure coincidence. I always voted with whatever the lobbying firm wanted." And Norm Coleman's wife had a no-show job, and so they treat politics like, honestly, but to be fair, how a lot of professions worked in this country and still do, unfortunately, which is, hey, you're a mechanic and and you're with a union or whatever, and you want to get your son a job there, right? And it's understandable because you're rooting for your son. And so I'm not saying it in a bad way, but that's, by the way, why we did affirmative action, because people wanted their sons and daughters to get the jobs, but then Black people could never break in because they didn't have the job in the first place, right? And so in politics, though, it's a little bit more nefarious because you're not just getting a job as a plumber, you're getting a job as folks who decide where billions or trillions of dollars of money goes, and then we're talking about corruption.
Right. Let me say 2 things on this. I mean, first of all, these jobs that we're talking about that the 2020 graduate got and some of these, they're low level jobs. I mean, let's be truthful here. It's sort of a soft, petty corruption, and what it says to me is that if you're willing to do this, how far are you willing to take it? Right. So if you're willing to give 3 kids of one guy who's your best bud a job in the White House, what else are you willing to do for that guy? Because let's talk about Steve Ricketty. Steve Ricketty and the Ricketty family is to the Bidens what the Podesta family was to the Clintons.
Got it.
Steve Ricketty is a healthcare lobbyist. He founded his own firm, Ricketty and Company, with his brother, who's still in charge of that lobby shop, and counts Amazon as a client, in addition to many pharmaceutical companies. Steve Ricketty was someone who was the chief of staff of Biden, but he has gone in and out of this lobbying firm and government for 30 years. He was in the Clinton administration. He helped pass the Telecommunications Act of 1996, went back into private practice as a lobbyist, He started, advocating on behalf of healthcare firms, and so on and so on. So, in getting his 3 kids a job at the White House, when that tenure ends, they can go out and say, yes, I know all these people because I worked with them in the White House. And that's how you establish a resume item. And you can go into the lobbying world and say, yes, I have contacts and I know people who worked in the White House because I worked there alongside them. And so this is almost like seeding the next generation of Rickettis to continue their work in the revolving door between Washington and big government and big business. So that's what's really going on here.
Yeah. Sorry, Francesca, go ahead.
I was just gonna bring in, it is low level, but it's not all low level, it's not all kids. So the press secretary, Jen Psaki's sister, Stephanie, was appointed senior health advisor at HHS. Ron Klain, I think Ron, right? Advisor to the president.
Yep.
His wife, Monica Medina, was nominated for Assistant Secretary of State focused on oceans and environment. Now, they have experience, so it isn't Kushner trying to do peace in the Middle East. But it also isn't just interns and sort of assistant deputy low-level schedulers. Just to bring that in.
No, absolutely right.
Right, so let me say 2 things about that. First, this is why it's absurd when anybody's partisan, right? Like, what, only Republicans do this? No, of course not. Look, these are all Democrats doing it. It's only Democrats who do it. Were you not awake in the last 4 years, right? And by the way, the last 40 years. So both parties definitely engage in this, and it would be absurd to claim only one of them does, okay? So then number 2, there are different levels to it, right? So progressives argued for Ron Klain, who you just talked about, to be chief of staff, and we won on that rather than Ricchetti, because those were 2 out of the 3 options, top options, right? Because Ron Klain is actually better than Ricchetti. Now that doesn't mean that everybody's spick and span and clean, no, but there are different layers to it, right? And I like how Klain sent his wife into the ocean, but you
out
get
to sea.
Yeah, out to sea department, right? Okay, no, but seriously, the Rickettis are the reason we don't have Medicare for all. That David's absolutely right. That is the much bigger corruption item here, right? Not that this is not important about the family members, it is. And it's an old time racket in Washington. But the Rickettis doing a revolving door of lobbying and political advising, telling politicians for decades on end, remember, protect the pharmaceutical industry. Now they don't say it that way. It's important that we have innovation in the health industry, blah, blah, blah. It's always innovation. Right. But the reality is, no, it's pure corruption. They get paid millions upon millions of dollars from the big drug companies to make sure that no healthcare reform passes. Now, we knew Biden was against Medicare for all from the beginning. But by the way, partly because of Ricchetti and other lobbyists like that he's been allies with for decades. But even now in his administration, he said that he was going to lower the Medicare eligibility age. And that was one of the very first things that he threw out the window. He said he was going to lower prescription drug prices. Maybe the single most popular policy proposal in the whole country. Everyone, I mean, truly bipartisan, right? Everyone is in favor of that. No, he won't do it. He won't do the most popular thing in the country. Why? Because big drug company lobbyists like the Rickettis are his top advisors and tell him not to. And then, by the way, let's close the loop on that, and then funnel millions of dollars into the campaigns of Joe Biden and other top Democrats. That's just a fact.
It seems like Cenk is mad, but I do want to bring in, there is someone who is more mad than Cenk and is not a progressive. I have to just name him, Walter Schaub, formerly of the Office of Government Ethics, which did exist. He resigned under Donald Trump, right? Obviously for many different conflicts of interest that administration had. He is livid and has the most amazing tweet thread that you have to read. But let me just read a few things that he said. He said in response to this story, "I'm sorry, I know some folks don't like hearing any criticism of him, but this royally sucks. I'm disgusted. A lot of us worked hard to tee him up to restore ethics to government and believe the promises. This is a real FU to us and government ethics." He continues and says, "We've got a Raytheon board member leading DOD. We've got a private equity fund people in the White House and at state. You've got corporate execs at big law firms who represent corporations throughout, and personnel is policy. Is he better than Trump? Yes, but that's all that says is that he's better than a straight up crook. That cannot be the standard for ethics. Is he doing some things right? Yes, absolutely. He's doing great with the pandemic and he's starting to rebuild alliances, thank goodness. But authoritarianism and corruption go hand in hand. If we don't clean up government, we're setting the table for the next authoritarian. Speaking of which, Biden's administration is fighting tooth and nail to stop congressional oversight, not just of this administration, but of the Trump administration too.
Walter Shaw, my new favorite person. Go get him. And if you notice, he said a lot of people won't like this because in Washington, you're not allowed to criticize Democratic leadership. People hate that. All right, David.
Yeah, this was a fire thread. It was unbelievable. And Walter Shaw is not like a fire-breathing kind of guy. I mean, this is not somebody you would expect this takes from, especially against someone who's not Trump, right? Yes. Against the Democrats. So good for him and for calling this out, and maybe this will step up the Biden administration to realize the credibility that they're losing by doing, even whether it's the small stuff like a scheduler, or whether it's the stuff like Lloyd Austin, who was on the Raytheon board running the Defense Department, and everything in between. Maybe this level of criticism will let them know that they're straying a little far from their stated principles, not their actual principles.